Okay, so I'll finish up here with climate change, as I sometimes refer to it, at least this alarmist ideology of climate alarm. I refer to it as the modern religion that is global warming. But of there's plenty of merit to the climate discussion and the concern we have as Americans and as world citizens. So, just taking a look here. All right. So I'm talking to Scott Adams Says here on Twitter. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, and he has his morning show, Real Coffee with Scott Adams, here on YouTube. Check it out. He's also on Periscope. And he has a new book coming out too called Loser Think, which I actually just pre-ordered, so I'm looking forward to that. So I say here, climate change is such a complex topic, but I like to see new approaches to combating the effects scientists have observed, notably the effects caused by people, the anthropogenic portion of climate change. So here's to this technology being successful, and life on Earth getting better for every life form. So I'm talking here about carbon capture and, of course, Generation 3 and Generation 4 nuclear. Check out Mark Schneider on Twitter. Sub Schneider is his handle, and he talks about Generation 4 nuclear quite often. It's actually pretty cool technology. It's experimental. It's actually being put into development because these things, of course, they are very expensive to develop. But Generation 4 has a few key features that I think are worth mentioning. It can't melt down. Generation 4 nuclear can't melt down. And of course, it also uses nuclear waste for fuel. So there's this sort of recycling element to it. But that isn't the whole story. That isn't the whole story. Yes, we should develop our nuclear energy and, of course, maybe convert some of our nuclear weapons across the world. I'm talking all people here. We should convert some of those things into power versus destruction. I think that would be a good thing. Don't be scared by the Chernobyl miniseries. Yes, there have been disasters in the past, but those were older models of nuclear, such as Generation 1 and 2. Okay? 3 and 4 have looked at the past. You know, the past does not dictate the future, but we do learn from it. We can forgive, but we never forget. These newer versions of nuclear have tried to get away from the meltdown fear that many people worry about, and that miniseries like Chernobyl, well, they stoke those fears again. It's like this Cold War fear, the same kind of fear that the media used for Russiagate, that, you know, sort of McCarthyist Russian Cold War fears, like, oh, the Russians are out to get us. They're doing the same thing with miniseries like Chernobyl. Great series, I've heard. I'm not trying to say don't watch it, but keep in mind that it can be looked at to a degree as anti-nuclear propaganda, because that is ultimately the effect that it's had with a lot of people. So I think we should develop that. Of course, carbon capture, if you think that there's too much CO2 out there, and of course with carbon guilt, that's what it's all about, getting the carbon emissions down. I have a number of videos on that, so check those out on my channel. For example, I have a video about Entropy talking about climate change, Entropy's take on climate change. But there's a number of videos out there, and yeah, I mean, we need to look at every option. We need to plant more trees. We need to balance, if there's any imbalance caused by anthropogenic global warming or anthropogenic climate change, where, you know, there's the fact that we may have affected it with the Industrial Revolution, that China, the United States, and other places with high carbon emissions have caused an issue. Yes, we do need to be cognizant of that, and we need to pay attention, but of course, there's also been a lot of bunk science. There's been a lot of studies out there that have not proven true. There's been a lot of claims about climate change from Al Gore and many others, Hansen, and of course Michael Mann, that have not borne out to be true, and yet they're largely unchallenged by the media. and largely unchallenged by the political party that has taken this as their wedge issue, the Democrats. They, of course, have that as their, well, if you don't vote for us, you only have 7 years, 12 years, 40 years, 60, 80. There's going to be 100 million people dead because of climate change by 2100. If you don't vote for us, we'll put the fear and shame of the God of the modern religion of global warming in you. And you better vote for us. If you don't, it could be Armageddon. Climate catastrophe. So they use fear, of course. Greta Thunberg as a front for that ideology and that world. But, the intentions, as with, many of these modern religions or many of these ideologies, the intentions underlying are rather good. They are rather good. They want to save the world. They want it to be cleaner, clean air, clean water. And we should, of course, I believe in all that. I'm an environmentalist and an agnostic to global warming because, you spend 30 or 40 years talking about the ozone layer and Manhattan's going to be underwater and blah, 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 blah. And then you look back and you say, well, why weren't things happening? We talk about the Industrial Revolution and burning fossil fuels, but there was a spike in CO2 before the heat went up, right? So there's this question about, is burning fossil fuels, I might have that wrong, so put a comment below if I have that wrong about CO2, but CO2 and temperature, there's this question of correlation and causation there. What goes up first? Does CO2 go up and then the temperature goes up, or does the CO2 go up because the temperature goes up? So using the question around that, they've said, well, we have a chart here, and whenever the temperature goes up, CO2 goes up too. Well, I'm no scientist, seek subject matter experts, but again, there's correlation, there's not causation established. But of course, if you're a layman like me, or you, largely potentially, tell me if you're a layman in the comments section below. I'm going by what the scientists say. And so it gets hard when some scientists say, well, we believe in global warming. I mean, again, there's long-term and then there's short-term, of course, where, it might go up over the course of 100 years, but if you look at it in the context of 1,000 years, there's a different trend. There's all this different sophistry that can take place with this. So if you're someone like me, like a layman, I'm not an expert, I just know I have a rudimentary knowledge of all these things. I could be easily fooled by any study because I'm just going by what people that I believe have credentials, have merit and veracity to their argument. I'm going by what they say. I'm putting faith in them over reason. I don't have the reason because I'm not one of those climate scientists. So it doesn't really matter if you believe in climate change or not. I do believe that the climate is changing. Okay, I do believe in that. I actually have another video, the Anthropogenic Global Warming Glossary #1, talking about climate alarm and climate skeptic. And I consider myself a climate skeptic. As an agnostic, I'm not fully on board because I've seen so many patterns, I've heard from so many scientists, I've read so many things, that I honestly, it could go either way. It could go either way. But do I want to destroy the world economy? Do I want to eliminate fossil fuels, eliminate fracking? No. Because once you've gotten to this point, it's not a slippery slope where you continue again and again, but we've gotten to this level of world development where things would change too much if we were to eliminate all these things. Now, coal we might be able to get rid of. It's kind of dirty. And we should be looking into solar and, of course, wind. Wind, we can still look at wind. I don't know how effective or efficient wind is, but solar, we should certainly get better at developing it and making it more cost effective. But of course, nuclear power, refining our natural gas and fossil fuel process, and even finding a way for coal to continue existing in some capacity until the world economy puts coal aside. That's my position on coal. But Either way, we should be working on it. We should be trying to prevent whatever outer limit awful prophecy takes place in the modern religion of global warming, true or not. Much like the God above, whether they exist or not, well, you still want to conform to that moral core, that moral code, and do the right thing. So